Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm not late this morning. It was good of me not to be not late, wasn't it, Ethan? I thought I did a very good job this morning.
Fantastic job showing up on time for your own show.
Yeah, I was very happy about that, yeah. I mean, but, the thing is, I've still got the same energy as I had last week because we're talking about a very debatable topic right now, about vaccines. But anyway, before we get into that, was your week successful? Did things happen for you this week?
Things have been happening for me this week. Yes, it's been a very busy week, but a very successful week.
I don't know where the week's gone, personally speaking. I mean, all I tend to do is,
Yes.
I come back in here. I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday again. How we get into that? I mean, it's rather daunting. I don't know about anybody else in the world, but as we get older, time seems to fly quicker.
Yeah, scary so.
So, vaccines. I want to get right into this because I think this is a very important topic, and I've been tweeting this week on my Twitter page, and a lot of people have been responding, agreeing, disagreeing, and that's what we're here for. I mean, I think the idea is to actually talk about it because I think we all need to talk and express our opinions, and but to do so correctly, in a sense, what somebody's opinion is doesn't necessarily mean they're bad. It just means it's a different opinion. That's from my point of view. Maybe somebody else looks at it differently. However, on the vaccine debate, my point is that we need to be informed on the things that we are giving our children. There are documentaries out now because of this topic has become very, very hot. We have a new documentary out, the three documentaries that came out just recently. One is called Bot, the other one is Trace Amounts, and the other one is Greater Good. Now, these basically outline the facts from different psychiatrists, medical professionals, moms, different people in different industries that have an opinion and who back it up with facts. They're not nutcases. They're not the conspiracy theorists. I've watched them, and I would like to hear the other side of the story because I think it's very important to know both sides. And how do we look at this situation? Now, we will have a couple of callers calling in this morning. If you do want to call in and make your opinion felt about this, you can actually do so on 818-602-4929. Before we actually go to that, we will actually be having somebody that we're going to have online this morning. And she is a medical professional. She's a mom. She's been in this industry for... she's a working mother of a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. She works as a physical therapist. And she's been treating 0 to age 3 since 2002. So she's been dealing with a lot of children, and she enjoys her job and encourages people to make informed choices. She's not providing medical advice, nothing of that nature. She's speaking on behalf of her own personal beliefs, and I want to get her on the line right now, Ethan, to talk about this issue. Now, the vaccine debate, it's a new documentary. It dives into, as I said, one of them is Bought. It dives into the inner workings of the industries and at the core of our food and healthcare system, exploring the truth about how vaccines and drugs are developed and rushed to the market. Hello, Katie, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Good, thanks. I'm just listening on the other ear. Sorry to the stuff. So, good. I'm great. How are you?
Oh, sorry. I meant Jenny. Sorry, I didn't mean Katie. I meant Jennifer. Sorry. My fault.
I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry.
I've just been introducing you. You are a professional in the industry. You're a nurse, I believe. Is that right?
I'm a physical therapist, I work with the pediatric age group of 0 to 3. I have a bachelor's of health sciences, and I have a master's in physical therapy. So I am out there I am in the industry of the medical field daily.
Right. Well, the thing is obviously. I know you know about the documentaries that I've just brought up. One of them is Bought, and we want to talk about how to. You can't really effectively address one industry without addressing them all, as they're now totally all linked together until and people have to sort of be known and be told what is going on, or make their own informed decision on things. I mean, because the drug industry is very powerful. I mean, it's a $30 billion dollar industry. What's your opinion on the vaccines or vaccinations, in a sense, as to how the industry's set up these days?
Well, I know that the pharmaceutical companies, I know that this may be a big turnoff for people in the beginning, but the pharmaceutical companies, we have to realize this is America, and they are a for-profit, they're for-profit companies. They have shareholders, so their main priority is to produce income for these shareholders, but that's besides the point. There are so many doses by the age of 6 right now. I mean, I'm looking at the time, I was born in the 70s, so I had, I think, 6 to 8 vaccinations. And in 2015, we have, by the age of 6, we have 37 doses. And that's not including if your child was premature, born maybe, at 26 weeks gestation, maybe they had some type of pneumonia surfactant shot, it had all these other medical conditions going on. And then they're having all these vaccinations on top of it, plus they sometimes get a monthly Synagis shot to prevent RSV, to help them have that vaccination to build up that immunity. I just think it's gone from what we trying to control to what is just, I mean, I looked at this list right here, it's 37 doses. I believe the rotavirus had like 17 strands. I just look at this and I think to myself, what adult, would want in the next 6 years to go in and say, I think I'll do this schedule to see how it turns out. And we're doing this to our children, that's starting in utero. Why are we giving a hepatitis B vaccination at 2 days old at birth? It's just a little too extreme to me.
A lot of people are going to say, look, there is the herd mentality, which is, we vaccinate everybody and we're clear of diseases, and that's the way we should look at it, because some people don't want to go and have shots. I mean, I was watching, I think it was the Greater Good documentary, and it basically showed one school having something like 1,500 children that hadn't been vaccinated, and they were brought in under police escort, in a sense, to line up and be made to take these vaccinations. So how do we look at this? Because there are some vaccines that are good, in a sense. There is a lot of things like measles and mumps and polio that need to be addressed.
Yes, those are the diseases. I think there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. My concern is I'm not anti-vax, I'm not pro-vax. I'm just like, I want to get the education out there. I'm just looking at this. I'm like, okay, so you have let's just take the Disneyland outbreak. You have 150 children that are individuals that were infected with the measles virus. So I think 1 out of every 4 of those children had a vaccination. And the other 4 didn't. So in my mind, as a parent, without having any medical background, I look at that and I say, wow, darn if you do, and darn if you don't. And then if you do, what's in it? And are you able to get through all the adjuvants and all the other ingredients that are in it? And if you did, great. I just look at this whole thing and I think, I get completely sometimes overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, so if you give a vaccine, which is the MMR for the measles, and that child may have a titer, he may need another one, it may wane, it may go away, and that child can shed 6 days before or maybe 9 days after he or she is vaccinated, and if they're even symptomatic. So you don't know what's going on. They say, well, we had other immigrants coming in. Well, other countries vaccinate for MMR. And then the children that were not vaccinated got this measles as well, but they have lifelong immunity. So theirs isn't going to wane. So I have to look at the overall picture of saying, is it bad to be unvaccinated? Those children, there were 150 cases. They were all contained. We have better hygiene. We have better medical care. It didn't spread. All the cases were resolved. 24 of those cases were for students who were in school. It did not spread. And I just have to look at that whole situation, and I have to say to myself, I mean, was it necessary to have a law to support that this is a public health issue? I think we did a great job at containing that and dealing with that issue. So in regards to herd immunity, I mean, yeah, maybe some kids get the illness and they have the lifelong immunity, and the other ones that are vaccinated, they're going to have to get another titer. I don't know, to see if they had the vaccine and it waned. Maybe they have to have another booster shot. I'm not sure, but I mean, in all, I have to look back and say, okay, where is my child in all this? And this herd immunity, is he or she protected? And what am I doing as a parent to help protect that? Do I believe in vaccination? Great, I'm going to go for it. Well, I need to look at the consequences.
Let's talk about something else here, because I think there are so many issues involved in this. I mean, you talked about the MMR, and that obviously has been linked to mercury in the system, I believe it is. And that's one of the big things that a lot of people are talking about is mercury that stays in the blood. Now, in looking at these documentaries, it shows that you talked about the way it's actually delivered. One is we eat mercury, and our body is actually able to disperse it and release it from the body. But once it's injected to make that virus take hold. Correct, and there's a word for it. It's an adjuvant.
Well, basically, the adjuvant that's put in there is this thimerosal, that creates your body to make an immune response, so the virus can so your body can react to that virus that's put in. The problem with that is that those adjuvants that are put in there don't leave the body. When you, like you said, when you ingest the aluminum, it's passed through your body and your system. But when you're injected with it, they did muscle biopsy tests after 2 shots, and they still found underneath the fascia and the soft tissue in the muscle biopsy that there were the adjuvants were still located. The aluminum was still located and the thimerosal was located inside of the muscle tissue. So you're looking at, when does it go? Does it ever go? What are the long-term effects of that? Is it you made it through childhood, but it may still be in your muscle system or your system. What about into adulthood and when you're getting older? I mean, we have issues with, we can go on to issues with Alzheimer's and dementia and all those things.
Well, I mean, you're also talking about people getting older. Some people actually don't realize that sometimes what it does, it actually creates an effect in the system. It's not immediate. It happens, 3 months or later. 6 months or a year or 2 years afterwards. You don't know what those effects are. And that's one of the things, I mentioned a drug called Gardasil, which Merck put out a long time ago, which was a cure to cervical cancer in young girls. It was touted as the best thing there. I'm not sure why, because basically only 1% of deaths were due to cervical cancer. And after tests of 15 months, 1,200 on 1,200 girls under the age of 16, it was fast-tracked by the FDA, put on the shelf 6 months later, and recommended for universal use in all 11 and 12-year-old girls. So to me, that seems rather odd that it's put through so fast. It's not a matter of health at that particular point. It's a matter of politics and money. And that, to me, that's why I want to question what's in these drugs.
Yes, and I feel like like I said, it's a public traded company. It's for profit, and if you don't want to think of your child as that, then you need to get informed and see what's going on, because children are dying from these HPV vaccines. They're getting injured. They're having lifelong chronic diseases, neurological changes. They're having anaphylactic shock. I mean, if there is a risk, you have to have informed consent. We know that. We know that if there's a risk with an injection, you have to have informed consent. The other issue I have with that is it may end up going on this SB 277, the law. I don't know if it's going to be mandated, but there is a new law. I think it's AB 499. It's not new. It's from 2011, but they're saying that the HPV vaccine can now be added to the education system. For the sexual education system for the child, and at 12 years old, your child can be educated on sexually transmitted diseases, which is great, but they can be offered the HPV shot, and they don't have to get parental consent for that. Now, I think that's a big issue for me, because that's making me feel like the government doesn't trust me in raising my own child and teaching my child about sexual education and sexually transmitted diseases, but they're going to go behind my back and try to teach my child about that vaccine, and they're going to inject them. And what happens if there's side effects? Do I ever know what's happening? I don't know. Why is my child not getting up? Why is my child going into anaphylactic shock? I don't know. The results can be weeks later. How do I know what's going on? They're taking that consent. They don't need parental consent, and that's not okay. I don't want somebody else raising my child. I had my children for me to raise and take care of, and if that shot goes into my child, it's like Russian roulette. We have no pre-genetic testing to see how they're going to respond to any of those things. If that child is damaged, who do you think is going to help you? You're going to give up your child's education, possible college if you believe in that, or running a business, getting married and having a family as you get older. Who's going to take care of that child? Maybe the government will give you some funding, but as a mother, you will never, ever, ever take that emotional connection away. And if you have the feeling inside that you're going to die before your special needs child or injured child, you're going to have to live with that stress, and the doctors don't deal with that. They're going to test you, give you medication, support you a little bit outside of that, and then they're going to send you on your way. You are the parent. You have to deal with everything else.
No, and
I'm not okay with that.
There's going to be some people that are going to say, well, not vaccinations are not 100% safe. That's just the way it is. But it does combat measles and polio and smallpox and all these other horrible diseases that, admittedly, we don't know what the results of these types of things are these days, because they've been mainly eradicated from our system. They're horrible diseases that are not prevalent in our society or in American society as much anymore, because we vaccinated our children. However, based on that, the first national vaccine injury compensation claims that were filed since 1989. Just so that people understand this, there are 3,981 compensation awards that have been made against vaccinations. More than $2.8 billion in compensation paid out to petitioners. Now, that doesn't include the people that have not gone out and tried to get compensation for it. Because you're right, when somebody has, and you can look at the documentary The Greater Good, and you can see one family who has had their daughter involved in, they've lost their house because she was vaccinated, and they've now have $100,000 in debt. So what do you do? And absolutely, that entire thing is, at least give me the opportunity to make the choice to know what's in these vaccines that you are giving my child, so that I can make an informed decision as to whether or not I can spend the rest of my life worrying about whether or not they're going to have a adverse reaction to it.
Yeah, and that's probably, I believe that I heard that's 1 in 4 cases, that number you provided. And that program, if anyone doesn't know, the National Vaccine Compensation Program was established by the government because there was a law that granted all pharmaceutical companies and physicians in 1986 from being sued. So you cannot sue them if you have an adverse reaction or somebody dies. You cannot sue that pharmaceutical company and hold them liable for their product. But we have a funded national vaccine injury compensation program that paid out that money, and that not everybody knows about it. And a lot of those things go unreported if they're not diagnosed correctly by the doctor to say that, oh, that is a vaccine injury. And I wonder sometimes, where is the education going for them to identify it? That's kind of gets lost, and the VAERS reports, all those things, a lot of times they are not appropriately referred to and documented, and they're overlooked. I had a reaction to the Hep B vaccination on the 3rd series. 2 weeks later, I had severe diarrhea, stomach pain, severe joint pain, muscle pain, and I had to go on high doses of steroids. They sent me to infectious disease. They sent me to a rheumatologist. They couldn't find anything that was wrong, and the only thing they could relate it back to was possibly maybe this Hep B vaccine. It was horrible. So what do I do? I was misguided through the whole thing. So, my question is how many people even know about this compensation program, and how many injuries or adverse reactions are actually getting reported correctly, so they can benefit from this if they even qualify. I mean, 1 out of 4 cases, and we paid out $3 billion since I think the 1980s. I don't know what year that was exactly, but I think last year we paid out $2 million. I just question the medical field. I think sometimes it works smoothly for some people, and I think for other people, it doesn't always work smoothly, and sometimes it is a guessing game.
I want to bring a point that you actually brought up a second ago, which was the adverse reaction that happens in a child. Now, I know my son went and had a shot, and that night he was crying, complaining of pains in his legs for a 2 or 3 or 4 hours. We thought nothing of it. We gave him he got another shot 2 weeks later, the same shot, and the same night he was screaming in pain. So you can't tell me there was nothing inside that vaccine that was not good for him, that he was not having a reaction to. And that's my point, is not every child is going to be the same. Not every human is the same. And therefore we have to know there has to be some sort of, some children are, and I don't know which vaccine it is, but they are, once they've had the first shot, they are allergic to it after that point. And therefore you can get a blood test to find whether you're now allergic to it, and you don't need to take the rest of the shots. However, we are being forced by the government, by mandates in government, to give our children shots. We don't know that is in them, and I have a problem with that.
I have a big problem with that too. I have a big problem with that because if you look at the CDC guidelines for adverse reactions, it may happen, fever, screaming, crying, but when you work with a family, say that I'm going in and the child stopped talking, I have to go in and I do a developmental assessment. You don't know what's going on with that child. They don't know what's going on with the child. Sometimes the parents are in complete denial because they're first-time parents. You don't know how to raise this kid and yet alone get them now into a regional center system to get a test, and then you have doctors running tests. Now they're going to geneticists, and they're completely overwhelmed. Or maybe they just sent them over to have the assessment because they realize they're not talking. And through the interview, when you start to talk to these parents, I've been doing this Los Angeles and Ventura County probably since about 2002, excuse me. And when I talk to these parents, the majority of them are vaccinated, and the one most common thing I hear, and I don't write this on my report because it's sometimes it's very personal when you're talking to these parents, and it opens up another set of things to come out for them to share with you, is I wish I would have never given that last MMR shot. Right before that they were fine, and I just noticed they stopped talking. And if you hear that from a lot of people, when you're doing these assessments, I mean, in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's weird. The other mom said that. Oh, that's weird. I just heard that yesterday from another mom. And it just blows my mind. Maybe the autism, I don't know, maybe they may be diagnosed with autism. This is the journey where we kind of intervene and come in, and they start to get referred over and start going to see specialists. And we're in that journey with them. It's very isolating. They're waking up, they're trying to realize it, and they start to realize, oh my gosh, the doctor may have not known to not give that shot when I complained, or, all these things. They start to wake up, and you're with them through that emotional journey. And it's very isolating. It's very painful for them.
I think you're absolutely right doing this. I mean, in a sense, I think the parents, again, we as parents and doctors, we're the same. We believe what we're given, and we're told this is okay and it's fine to take because we, much like the drug by Merck, which was fast tracked by the NDA Gardasil. It was put through in a very quick, short amount of time. It had been approved. Therefore, the tests stopped on that drug. There were no more tests to find out what the long-term effects of that drug were. Therefore, we believe as parents, as doctors, that we believe those drugs are safe. It doesn't mean we're bad doing it, but I believe that once you see something happened after a shot to your child, you must question the validity of taking it again, because you don't know what the thing is.
Yes, and you must report it to the VAERS. You must report it to the doctor. You must report it to VAERS. I'm just thinking, like, it bypassed all those. It bypassed the clinical trials that it was doing, so it could fast track it to get to all these kids. And I'm just wondering if they were making the kids the actual clinical study, so they could get the responses that they needed to see who responded to that drug and who got adverse reactions. So then they can make the kids, basically, it's the Nuremberg Code. The kids now are becoming the clinical studies, because now they're gathering the information. Oh, this one had chronic, myalgia. This one had death. This one went into anaphylactic shock. This one, had brain damage. So then they're gathering their information that way, which is not okay. Our children are not clinical trial studies. They need to be holding these clinical trial studies and putting out truthful reports And maybe we need clinical trial studies that aren't funded by a pharmaceutical company. I think that would probably be a good way to go as well.
You know what I find very interesting as well, because the fact is, and you see it all the time in commercials. A lot of the time you'll see, a lot of drug commercials, and the drug says this will improve your sex drive or your bone mass, whatever. But it'll also call an anaphylactic shock, it'll cause a death, this, and you're going, really? And I want to take that? I mean, seriously.
Exactly.
But at least it's actually on the label in a sense. But in some cases, in these vaccines, it is not, and that's the issue. I think we have to address.
You have to look for it. You have to look for it. I like to educate. So one way to educate is you go to the CDC and you look at the list of ingredients. You can go to the CDC website. They have a list of ingredients. If you have no clue what they're saying, what you can do is get a dictionary, look it up, and say, "Oh my gosh, aborted fetal cells! I didn't know those were in there." From an aborted baby's lung, you can look polysorbate, human diploid cells, MRC5. Formaldehyde that's derived from aspartame. I don't drink aspartame because I know that it's not good for you. I don't want to inject it into me. Oh, but it's okay that's injected to you. That's not okay. Go and look up and try to understand what, being unvaccinated and natural immunity to having a live attenuated virus put in you is. Know that you have shedding. Just go to the CDC and read these things. It's there for you to read. Everyone's like, oh, that's not true. That's not true. Go to the CDC website. Start researching. PubMed. Go to PubMed and research. The National Vaccine Information Center on the Internet has a website you can get some great information off of. There are religious groups, Children of God, and if you're religious, you can go on there and they have links to cited studies and documentation and the support of what they're writing and trying to educate you about. Go and look up these doctors. I mean, we have Susan Humphrey, Sherry Timpany, everyone, Sherry Timpany, Tony Bark. There's a list of them. And go and, I hate to say Google because that turns everyone off. Go and Google Dr. William Thompson from the CDC who was granted immunity. He's a whistleblower, and he'll tell you if you listen to his interviews. I felt guilty when I saw every autistic child. There was a guilt that he had because they omitted statistically hiding significant information in those in the study that he did with vaccines related to autism, and I believe with African American ones. Go and look at that. Look at the stuff. Empower yourself and get the education, and then make your choice. Yes, I want to vaccinate. I want to do these. No, I don't. I don't want to do these.
I love your passion for this because I think it's very and it's passionate from both sides of the fence. From people that believe that these vaccines are safe and we should have them across the board, and from there's a group of moms across America who have actually said we need to know, stop all the GMOs in our foods, stop all the things in vaccines that we don't know about, and we need to be more informed. And you're absolutely correct. Be more informed and find out these things. Now, you talked a little bit about autism. Now, and first of all, I want to say to anybody that's listening right now, if you have an opinion on this, we're welcome to bring you on right now, and you can talk about it. As I said at the top of the show, you can call us, and we will listen to you very, very, and whatever your opinion is, it doesn't matter. 818-602-4929. Again, if you don't call, that's still fine. You might be so enthralled with what we're talking about now that you might want to go and see what we've been suggesting. However, rates of autism and other serious immunological and neurological diseases have exploded over the same period of time that the children have been bombarded with vaccines one after another. Now, a lot of industry deny that vaccines cause autism, claiming it's a genetic disease, but it's actually an epigenetic disease, meaning it can be triggered by changes to a child's genes. What's prompting these changes? I mean, two of the things we do talk about, we've talked about mercury and we've talked aluminum, and some people say it doesn't stay in the body, it leaves, but as you mentioned, it is an adjutant to the actual virus so that it can stay in the body and combat the virus itself. Now, you mentioned something about the amount of doses that we've had up to date so far. Today, the CDC recommends 69 doses of 16 vaccines starting at the age of a day of birth at 12 hours of age through age 16. Now, the interesting thing is some of this, I do believe, is an old way of dealing with medicine. I know that when my child was born, every child has a vitamin K shot. Now, a vitamin K shot does not necessarily have to be given as a shot. It can be given orally. So there's a different way of doing this. So certain things are still in the medical establishment that have been going on for years, and they're like, well, it's worked, so we're not going to change it. But I think with the developing and changing of viruses, vaccines, and the way we handle things, we have to be up to date with the way we do things. So just to mention this, there are some statistics. Children with diabetes in 2001 was 1 in 500. Today, in 2014, it was 1 in 400. Children with asthma in 1980, it was 1 in 27. In 2014, it's 1 in 9. Children with learning disabilities in 1976, it was 1 in 30. In 2014, it's 1 in 6. Children with autism, 1975, it's 1 in 5,000 children. Every 1 in 5,000 children. In 2014, it's 1 in 68. Now, those numbers, people will say, well, obviously it's changing the genetics, but why? Why is it so closely linked to the amount of vaccines we've given to the children? Maybe it's the amount we're giving. Maybe it's the things that are in them. We need to be informed. We need to know what's in these things, and we need to be able to make a decision on it. And I think that's
not be coerced to make that decision.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, there was a family in New York. In New York State, let me just find it here. It was they were actually upheld a. I've got to find my notes here actually, where they are. Just looking at them. Well, actually, the funny thing was, you were talking about rights just a second ago. Jacobson versus Massachusetts in 1905, the courts upheld that under a police power, the government can force you to vaccinate, and that's what we're facing right now. Your rights to refuse are being overridden by the courts. Now, in 2014, the courts upheld a ruling where they ruled in favour of a New York school system against a family in Staten Island. The family's doctor had advised that their daughter not receive a vaccine due to the previous adverse reactions to the same vaccine. Now, why is it that the courts can say, this child had an adverse effect, but you're going to take another one? I have a problem with that.
I have a big problem with that.
And I think a lot of moms across the world will have problems with that type of big brother attitude. I have a problem with that type of thing. Shouldn't there be some sort of release that if a medical doctor says this child has had an adverse reaction and it is dangerous for them to have another, why should the government force us to have that child have another shot?
Why should the government force us to have any shots in general? Well, I don't think they should be forcing us to have it. They should educate us on it, but it's like anything. You mentioned earlier about having a response, like you see these commercials coming up, and you see the side effects for these medications. Well, we're in the hospital. We see people that have adverse allergic reactions that nearly die from medications that are on there, and that's why they do that, so they can't get sued. You said, I'm trying to go back. You mentioned something about having them force the vaccinations on you. They're basically coercing us. There's medical. This is having a vaccination. We talked about there are risks involved. There are adverse events. There's the issues that contraindicate them. Maybe you have an adverse reaction. Maybe you have an anaphylactic shock. I don't know what it is. Maybe they don't know what's going on. So you have some type of medical procedure, basically, is what this is. You're getting an injection. It's a medical procedure. Now, every doctor takes an oath first to do no harm, so they know that they need to monitor you. The second thing that they also do is they need to educate you on what they're giving you, if it's an oral med, if it's an injection, if you're doing any type of procedure, anything. You have a choice as a person for that informed consent. And they take an oath. The AMA backs that up. It's in their ethics. Every healthcare provider in physical therapy, OT, respiratory, all of them, we take an ethics law exam that says it's informed consent. We have to tell you, even if it's therapy, it's non-invasive. This is what are the benefits for you. This is why it's indicated. These are the contraindications. These are the precautions. And this may work. And if it does work, this is what we can do. And if it's not working, and then that person, with dignity and respect, has the right to refuse. It's not okay to discriminate against them. It's informed medical consent. And I'm not okay with a government telling me, you need to put this in your body, you have to do this, or your child can't do this, or I'm going to do this behind your child's back, and because I've educated it on it, and you're obviously not doing a good job, so now they need the vaccine. I'm not okay with that. This is informed medical consent. Those children, 18 years and younger, are my responsibility. They are my responsibility in my home. I had those children because I wanted to have children, not because I wanted the government to raise them and big brother me all the way through. That just takes the whole joyhood of being a mother away. So I'm not okay with people or the government overpowering informed medical consent. Everyone listening right now has a right to choose, and it's being taken away from you. And if you don't wake up, it's going to be gone.
Well, the other issue is, and thank you for joining us again this morning, Jennifer. I see that you have passion and a lot of valid information regarding this. Now, there is the other side of the effect, which we've talked about this morning, stating that there are a lot of people that really and very passionately, and I understand why, because we are trying to protect our kids, and we do want to make sure that we are not spreading something that could harm our children. Therefore, we are as passionate against it as we are for it. And I think but I think sometimes, and somebody tweeted me stating, you should know your chemistry a little better. I'm like, it's not a matter about me knowing my chemistry, it's about knowing the facts that are involved with it. And I think the fact is that we need to be informed and not be forced into it. We should, perhaps there is a way to actually see doctors that say, okay, you are to be given these vaccinations. These vaccinations, well, let's try them. If it gives your child an adverse effect, let's stop it. Or you sign this statement saying you will not do this, and you will not accept this vaccination. There may be something of that nature that we can enforce, because then at least they are at least given the information then and there of the effects and the results of what that vaccination can do to their child. And I think a lot of people don't bother to do that. They don't bother to read it.
They don't, and we do have the older bill that's being grandfathered out, the AB 2109, which is a personal and religious exemption that a naturopathic doctor, a PA, nurse practitioner, an MD, or doctor of osteopath can sign for you, and that's valid until January 1st. And if you get that signed by a doctor and take it in, you have the right for personal belief or religious exemption. And after January 1st, I believe July 1st, 2016, you no longer have the right to that exemption, if I'm correct, and now you'll have to go and you have to obtain a medical exemption, which, a lot of the adverse reactions don't qualify you for a medical exemption, and they're a lot tougher to get. And I know that there's a referendum going around on the bill, so that may postpone it if it gets put on the ballot. But you do have a choice right now, and you do have a choice if you get that exemption signed. If you're concerned about school, if your kid's in preschool and you have that exemption signed, you should be good to TK and kindergarten. That's your next checkpoint, as long as you don't change schools. And then once you're in kindergarten TK, if you're in there this fall, you should be okay up until the 7th grade if you don't change schools on a PBE. And also, I believe that the next checkpoint is at 7th grade. So if you're in 7th grade by this fall and you have the PBE, you're okay. Now, there may be delay, like I said, if it goes onto the ballot. You may qualify for a medical exemption. Children that are diagnosed with HIV positive or Hep B do not have to worry about their PBEs or have that. They're allowed to go to school, and I believe that there are children on ICPs they don't have to have that. And if you homeschool, you don't have to have your personal belief exemption. But I mean, what qualifies you for a medical exemption? It's so vague. And what are the pediatricians willing to classify as a medical exemption? Are they going to be monitored how many medical exemptions they give out? And then I believe that if you look at Dr. Sears, he has a blog, and he clearly explains it, which I thought was a nice read on maybe working with your pediatrician to maybe doing one vaccine at a time to see which ones are maybe possibly causing something to happen, if there is any reaction at all, and then that way you can see if you qualify for a medical exemption. But I mean, we're all in this together. This is about... to me, this is about parental rights, parental choice, informed consent. I just come from a medical background, so I get very passionate about it. I don't discriminate if your child is vaccinated. I don't discriminate against you if they're partially, vaccinated, selectively vaccinated, or not vaccinated at all. Because you know what? When all in all comes down to the main issue, it's you're the parent, that's your child. You have the right to decide. The government shouldn't be deciding this for you. You have to live with that child. You have to raise that child. It's not up to the government to raise your child. It's up to you. And just don't let them take that away, because right now you have a choice. And if you give up informed consent, it's just going to move on to other things. And you need to have that. That's your right as a human to have that informed consent. I support pro-vax. I support anti-vax. I see where they're all coming from because I'm a parent, and I see it. And I would never discriminate against either side. I say you have to live with what your choice is, so choose what's best for your family in that consent.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're going to be wrapping up. The time has flown by. We've got another 7 minutes of the show to go, and I've got a couple of other things. But thank you so much for informing us and helping us go through this topic, which is very passionate to a lot of people.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Bye.
Take care now. Bye-bye. So, John Bailey's on the line. Ethan, this is a very passionate topic, and there's a lot of statistics and a lot of things sitting. I think as anything happens, it's like having a maid in your house. When the maid first comes into your house, she cleans your house as well as she can. As another year goes by, suddenly she's not doing it quite as well. She does what she wants. And I think that's how the government is treating some of this, is that they're taking certain things. At the top end, it's all about cleaning the house properly. But then later on, they're taking advantage of some of the situations. And I think that's kind of where we are at this particular time. And the information that they're putting out there is not necessarily all the information that we can make a really assessed opinion and decision on regarding these things. So I want to just do something else. We've talked about some of the vaccinations that are out there. There are vaccinations. The drug industry is a very powerful industry. And I have so much more information I could go on with this, but I don't. We've run out of time. Actually, John Billy, you there?
I am here. Good morning, guys.
You've been listening to this morning. What's your opinion on this? Curiously, what's your opinion, Ethan, on it? What do you guys think?
John can go first if he likes.
Well, it's.
I don't believe in blanket anything. Put it that way.
Yeah, and again, I'm not a parent, and I don't know how differently I would feel about this if I had children. But I think that in any situation, education is key, and one of the biggest parts of education is information. And as we've heard, throughout the program today, as we talked about last week, there needs to be that transparency in vaccines. If you can go on a fast food restaurant's website and see how many calories or how much sodium is in a hamburger, then you should be able to know exactly what is in a vaccine that's being administered to your child, period. So that information needs to be readily available. It does need to be transparent. But on the other hand, the alternative to not receiving these vaccines can be just as dangerous.
Absolutely.
So it's a very difficult subject.
Ethan, I know you just said you don't believe in blanket anything, but what's your kind of thoughts on it?
I think we should know what's in it. I agree with John on that point. I really don't think we should be forced to inject our kids with anything unless we know exactly what it is. And we should have the final decision. I don't like to be told that. I think you're on your way to like a THX, if you know the movie reference, not the sound design reference, sort of form of mandatory medication of the human race to kind of keep you vaccinated. The next thing they're going to do is give you something to keep you passive.
Well, the interesting thing is, you look at the flu shot. The flu shot itself, in 2000, the recommendation was that anyone over 65 should receive the flu vaccine.
Was that the recommendation?
That was the recommendation in 2000. In 10 years, that went from anyone over 65 to every single person over the age of months, and mandatory for all healthcare workers. Now, the studies say that the flu vaccine is no more effective than a shot of sterile water, and flu shots contain mercury. Fetal deaths spiked in 2009 to 2010 when two vaccines were required. But then studies that looked at fetal deaths where mothers took the flu vaccine conveniently cut off the data at 2009 before that spike happened. So shouldn't we be, therefore we're not being truly informed about how that vaccine is being used?
No, we're not.
And I think that's the issue. That's the issue that I have a problem with,
Well, the caller made a good point of actually illustrating that it's format and a business model put in place by a for-profit company. They're going to want to make as much money as they can off of you, and they want to do it through vaccinations, needed or otherwise.
Agreed.
That's the sad thing, is that you're just a little bullet point on a stock sheet.
Yeah, and that's but the thing is, the more we speak out about it, the more we say, listen, our rights are that we should be heard, and people out there, whoever you are, should spread the word. I mean, again, I'm not against vaccinations. Let's make this very clear. I'm not against vaccinating our kids against certain things. I just want to know what's in them. I want to know what the effects are. That's what I want to know.
That's a great point. What should people do in response to this? Is there something on the Peace Fund site that can kind of serve as some sort of collect and inform sort of center?
What we should do, I mean, obviously, I'd like people to take a look at the, and there is masses of information in those 3 documentaries that I mentioned at the top of the show. Masses of one of them is Bought, the other one is Trace Amounts, and the other one is The Greater Good. And we'll mention those, and 2 of them I know are free. You can watch them online. You don't have to pay for them. The Trace Amounts is a $5 rental, and it's actually being shown in theaters across the country now, and there is a site that will actually show you these things, and we'll put those up on our website as well. You'll also be able to go to different governmental sites. As our caller mentioned, you can go there and check out what's in them, check out how you can actually raise your voice, and perhaps we will be able to make a change. But until we actually say something, and until we actually say, wait a minute, hold on a second, I don't want to be forced into doing anything like this, and I want to make sure that my child and other children are safe and be totally informed about it, then until we stand up and say something about it, this will go on, and then we'll suddenly find that we can't do anything about it, and then we're going to be really, really in trouble.
Yeah, agreed.
John,
go ahead.
John, can you bring us some updates? We've got 2 minutes left of the show, and it's been a very passionate show again, and there is reason. And I have lots more to talk about this show, but you know, this is one of the shows that we've actually talked about that has that type of passion. John, I know that you've got a couple of updates for us. Bring them to us. And
We do. Very quickly, everyone can go to thepeacefund.org, thepeacefund.org, and see all of our current fundraisers, all of the ways you can help support the causes that we support, our partner charities, and also support the show. All that information is there. We have 2 events that are winding up. First is Peace Fund Poker, which has its own specific website at peacefundpoker.org. That's going to be September 19th. Right here in California, well, right here for you guys. And if you would like to register to play, if you would like to sponsor, if you were an employer who would like to sponsor us, or if you think that your employer might like to sponsor us, you can go to peacefundpoker.org and find out all of the information. Also, the David Frey Memorial Golf Tournament, which will happen on August 10th at the Cherry Valley Country Club in Skillman, New Jersey. And that will be, they're partnering with the Peace Fund to help a young man named Alex get a colon transplant. He lost his entire colon, most of his small intestine, shortly after he was born, after contracting necrotizing enterocolitis. He's 6 years old now, and he's at a critical age where he needs this transplant. It's a $2 million operation. Very risky. But, obviously, even after insurance, there are going to be massive costs for this family, and the Peace Fund is trying to help. So you can go to David Frey Memorial. That's David, F-R-E-Y, memorial.com for more information about how the Peace Fund is working with them to help this young man.
Thank you, John. Thank you, all of you, for listening. Now, I just want to make a point. We've been talking about vaccines this morning. I want to point out the fact that there is a conflict of interest going on between CDC and the pharmaceutical industry, because many of the CDC researchers work for Big Pharma. So there is an issue there. And going back to what Ethan basically said about educating yourself on what vaccines you're putting into your child, we will put on a link where you can do that. It's vaxtruth.org is the site, dash 2011, and then there's a couple of other things on there, but the ends of a URL that we will put on our site very shortly, so you can actually get informed on this very, very topical, heated type of topic. Ethan, thanks for joining us this morning. I know we railroaded all the way through this, but I think it's a very passionate topic that needs to be discussed. In closing, I want to put a quote by Jeff Hayes from the documentary Bought. Jeff, you thank you for bringing us that information. And in his quote, he says, "Your health is now brought to you by Wall Street. If you thought they hurt us with the banks, Wait till you'll see what they're doing to our healthcare. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll talk to you again.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.